Imagine there exists a person who has the opportunity to simply come and take a huge amount of money, enough for him, his children, and even his grandchildren for the rest of their lives. But he voluntarily refuses this money. Sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? However, exactly such a situation once occurred. With great interest in how this story developed, all of America was watching, and the answers to many questions in this case turned out to be extremely unexpected. The story begins on December 29, 2010, a date now forever inscribed in the history of U.S. lottery draws. On this day, the next drawing of the multi-state lottery Hot Lotto took place. This drawing was notable because by then, a record amount of the maximum prize, in other words, the jackpot, had accumulated. Why was this so? For several months, no one could simply guess the winning combination, and therefore the amount rolled over from one drawing to another, gradually increasing, and by December 29th, it amounted to $16 million. And guessing the required sequence of numbers was indeed damn difficult. According to the lottery rules, to win the jackpot, one had to guess a sequence of 6 digits. Each of the first 5 numbers had to be chosen from the range of 1 to 47, and the last, the 6th number, the so-called hot ball, was chosen from the range of 1 to 19. Taking into account all possible combinations, the probability of winning was approximately a 1 in 30 million chance. Admit it, incredibly small. Nevertheless, precisely on this evening, someone got incredibly lucky. He guessed one of the 30 million combinations and became the owner of $16 million. But then, the fate of this win developed according to a scenario absolutely unexpected for everyone. A couple of days passed, a week, a month, and the winner still did not appear, did not claim his right to the prize. This greatly puzzled everyone. Why would someone ignore such great luck? Maybe someone simply forgot about their ticket, forgot to check it. At least, no other reasonable explanation for why someone would voluntarily refuse such a record win was found. One way or another, time passed, and soon the lottery organizers announced that if the winner does not appear and does not collect his prize within a year, then after this time the winner will lose the opportunity to receive the prize. One even came to their office in person. Each of these people claimed that he himself was the winner. True, no one could provide the necessary ticket, nor even name its serial number. The false winners had various excuses on this account, the most common of which was, "I simply lost the ticket and cannot provide it." Of course, it was not so easy to deceive the organizers. The answer was always logical. Without providing the winning ticket, no one will receive the prize. By this point, the story about the mysterious lucky person who won the record sum at that time had gained serious resonance in the media. The organizers themselves of the lottery were interested in finding the winner. The organizers knew the serial number of the ticket, and this gave them the opportunity to determine where it was purchased. This place turned out to be one of the quick-trip gas stations in the city of Des Moines, state of Iowa. To get access to the recordings from the gas station's cameras, the lottery representatives turned to the police. Dozens of hours of recordings had to be reviewed, and ultimately, on the video, the sought-after owner of the winning ticket was found. Only this added even more questions to the already quite tangled story. On the video was a man dressed in a black robe with a hood. He seemed to deliberately hide his face from the cameras, which of course seemed strange. He purchased coffee, a hot dog, and that very winning lottery ticket. Moreover, he chose the winning numbers himself. And here it is worth explaining how this happens. There are 2 options for purchasing tickets in such lotteries. You can purchase a ticket with a random combination of digits, or you can choose them yourself. In the latter case, you tell the selected digits to the operator, in this case the gas station cashier, and he prints them for you on the lottery ticket. The mysterious winner purchased the ticket using the second method. Who was this man, and why did he hide his face from the camera? At this stage, it was absolutely unclear. Ultimately, such a strange story interested the police as well. Perhaps fraud was involved here. Or perhaps this person's life was in danger, which is why he did not collect the money rightfully belonging to him. And if he did not collect it of his own free will, then why did he buy the ticket at all? There were so many questions and so few answers, or rather, there were almost no answers at all. Time passed. Only a couple of months remained until the expiration of the deadline allotted for collecting the prize. And precisely at this stage, something happened that added a new twist to the already twisted plot. The lottery organizers received a phone call, but this time it differed significantly from the hundreds of others previously received. The person on the other end of the line introduced himself as Philip Johnston, a lawyer from Canada, and he became the only one among the hundreds of callers who could correctly name the serial number of the winning ticket. Johnston spoke very clearly and confidently, but all his confidence disappeared when he was asked a simple question, namely, to describe what he was wearing on the day he purchased the ticket. For seconds, the man fell silent, then described his clothing, but described it incorrectly. The organizers continued to bombard him with clarifying questions. The man's voice trembled, and at some point he simply hung up. On the one hand, Johnston knew the ticket number, but could not answer additional, seemingly simple questions. This puzzled both the police and the organizers even more. Further, the tangled story of the unclaimed $16 million took another unexpected turn. A new call came in. On the other end of the line was again the already familiar to the organizers, Philip Johnston. But this time he had a different story. He admitted that last time he lied about being the owner of the winning ticket. He added that he merely represents the interests of the winner, since the winner himself wishes to remain anonymous. He proposed the following option. Johnston would bring the winning ticket, and the organizers would transfer the money to his client's account. However, the lottery had strict rules that had to be followed. Namely, the prize had to be handed directly to the winner, without intermediaries. Thus, Johnston's proposal was rejected. He tried to argue but achieved nothing, and, as last time, simply hung up. There was no doubt that Johnston indeed had some relation to the winner. After all, he knew the ticket number. But why did the winner himself so carefully conceal his identity? So carefully that he voluntarily refused $16 million. One way or another, time passed. The year allotted by the organizers to collect the prize was expiring, and just when the last day of this term remained, something unexpected happened again in this story. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the winning ticket. We have been searching for it for 365 days, and when only 1 hour and 50 minutes remained until the deadline, two people brought, as we believe, the winning Hot Lotto ticket to our office. The coveted lottery ticket was finally delivered to the lottery company's office. It was brought by a group of lawyers representing the company Hexam Investments Trust. This company was allegedly registered in Belize, a small country in Central America. Broadly speaking, there was nothing particularly unusual in this. American companies were often registered there, mainly to pay fewer taxes. And despite the fact that a real press conference was convened regarding the receipt of the ticket for journalists, the problem remained exactly the same. The organizers again refused to transfer the money, even in exchange for the winning ticket, as in the previous case. The reason was the rules. Receiving the prize through third parties or anonymously was not allowed. Ladies and gentlemen, the application for receiving the Hot Lotto jackpot has been withdrawn. We received an official refusal from the lawyers here in Des Moines representing Hexam Investments Trust. The question is, what the hell is going on? From the very beginning, we knew this would be a unique case. We acted as in all other cases. We have a certain security protocol that we follow in order to award the prize. But from the very beginning, we did not receive any of the requested documents. Faced with refusal, the lawyers left, leaving behind yet another trail of strange questions and suspicions. The organizers again turned to the police. They checked what kind of company Hexam Investments Trust was. It turned out that it really existed and was indeed registered in Belize. But the most intriguing thing was something else. The founder of this company was a person with the already familiar name to everyone, Philip Johnston. After discovering this connection, the police now seriously became interested in Johnston, the key figure in this tangled story, and he was quite quickly found and brought in for questioning. Under pressure from the police, Johnston's confidence quickly faded. Ultimately, he admitted that the winning ticket had been given to him by two people, Robert Sonfield and Robert Rhodes. According to him, they asked Johnston to organize the receipt of the prize through trusted persons. For some reason, they themselves, as they say, did not want to shine. Having in hand two new names, the police quickly located Robert Sonfield and Robert Rhodes. But their versions strongly contrasted with what Johnston had told the police. Both Sonfield and Rhodes claimed they had nothing to do with this story, that they had never seen the winning ticket, and that they were not acquainted with Johnston at all. Detectives found themselves at a crossroads. This was clearly some murky story, but there was nothing concrete to accuse any of its participants of. In the absence of any evidence against any of the participants in this story, the police were forced to release them. The $16 million remained unclaimed. The real winner never came for them, and the police soon closed this case. However, closing the case did not at all mean that this was the end of this story. 4 years passed, and despite the fact that the case was closed, one detective simply could not forget about it. One thought haunted him. Why would someone so simply, voluntarily refuse such a colossal amount of money? Ultimately, this very detective decided to show the recording of the ticket purchase to the public. The hope was that someone would recognize the man in the video, and thus this mysterious personality and the story behind him would be revealed. And indeed, soon the police received that very coveted phone call. The caller was a certain woman who, as it seemed to her, recognized the silhouette and voice of the man in the recording. According to her, this was a certain Eddie Tipton. At this stage, just a name. But when the police found out who Tipton worked for, the puzzle slowly began to come together. Tipton turned out to be the director of the Information Security Service of the Interstate, attempts at fraud with the lottery. And now this very person found himself at the center of such a tangled story with unclaimed $16 million. Now possessing this information, the police fully concentrated their attention on Tipton. As it turned out, Tipton owned a luxurious house with a swimming pool, a basketball court, and a huge backyard. In addition, he had a solid collection of cars. At the same time, Tipton earned about $100,000 per year, a large amount, but clearly not enough to afford such a luxurious house and car collection. This fact alone was not yet sufficient to accuse Tipton of anything, but this was only the beginning. Further, the police managed to establish Tipton's connection with the previously mentioned in this story, Sonfield and Rhodes. It turned out that Tipton had contacted Sonfield and Rhodes by a hiring website, LinkedIn. Further, detectives studied the printouts of phone conversations. Tipton, Rhodes, and Sonland had talked on the phone for at least 2 hours. The police now had grounds to believe that this entire story was nothing other than an attempt at fraud. All three, Tipton, Sonfield, and Rhodes, were eventually arrested. It was found out that earlier in his youth, Tipton had been convicted of stealing computer software. In other words, it is completely unclear how with such a past he ended up in such a position. Also, detectives managed to find several people who stated that Tipton possessed fairly good programming skills. Specifically, he was very interested in writing computer viruses and rootkits. And indeed, on the computer that generated the final results of the drawings, a third-party program was found, and access to this computer was held by Eddie Tipton. Thus, everything came together into a single picture. Tipton, using a virus, rigged the drawing result. He hoped to anonymously receive the prize, but anonymity was not possible, so the prize remained unclaimed. As a result of the trial, Tipton was sentenced to 10 years in prison. But this was far from the end of this story. To some extent, one could even say that this was only the beginning. After the verdict, Tipton and his lawyer did not appeal, as if the 10-year sentence suited them. They seemed satisfied with it. You understand yourself that this was extremely strange. This nuance did not go unnoticed by the prosecutor. It seemed that Tipton's past was worth digging into much deeper. And here, another important role was played by the fact that this case had quite a lot of publicity. Detectives received a call from a man from Texas. This man had been closely following Tipton's case on TV and had something to add to this story. The man said that in 2005, his neighbor, Alexander Hicks, won about $500,000 in the lottery. Moreover, the man had seen Tipton and Hicks together at least once. And there was another important nuance. Soon after that, Hicks died. This led to a much more sinister thought than the idea of simple fraud. Maybe Tipton was involved in the murder, or maybe not just one. But in reality, it turned out that Hicks died of cancer. Tipton was not involved in his death. However, perhaps Tipton was involved in his win. Perhaps that case with the attempt to get $16 million was not the only one. In an attempt to find this out, detectives analyzed the names of all Hot Lotto winners over the last 10 years. The list was quite large, more than 10,000 names. Nevertheless, thanks to careful, painstaking work, among them several already familiar to the police were found. It turned out that on January 23, 2005, Eddie Tipton's brother, Tommy Tipton, won $567,000 in Colorado. On December 29, 2007, the previously mentioned Robert Rhodes won $780,000 in Wisconsin. And on November 27, 2011, Kyle Kahn, who was also acquainted with Tipton, won $1.2 million in Oklahoma. It became obvious that Tipton had been influencing winning combinations for a long time and had done so far from just once. Experts very thoughtfully studied the program he had installed in the system generating winning numbers, but found no logic in how this program worked. It was completely unclear exactly how Tipton influenced the result. This mystery intrigued the authorities and representatives of the lottery company so much that Tipton was offered a deal. They promised to soften his sentence if he himself honestly confessed to everything. Tipton eventually agreed. According to Tipton, this entire long and tangled story began with a cliché thrown out jokingly by one of his colleagues. The lottery company's accountant said to him something like,
"You're responsible for the lottery security system. Why don't you find a way to win? You could determine the winning numbers."
This joking phrase planted a seed of doubt in Tipton's mind. Over time, such a possibility intrigued his mind more and more. He knew the system from the inside, and this knowledge was simultaneously both a tool and a temptation for Tipton. He ultimately ended up on a path that later led to the largest lottery fraud in the country. Eventually, Tipton decided to turn his plan into reality. Normally, the numbers that are drawn are generated by random electrical noise. Then the computer processes this noise and converts it into digits, thus forming the winning numbers. As I said at the very beginning, under normal conditions, there were about 30 million such combinations. What did Tipton do? At the stage of converting random noise into digits, he built in a reduction of the number of possible combinations from 30 million to about 200. And Tipton knew all these 200 combinations. To win, he or his accomplices simply had to buy tickets with all these combinations. And considering that a ticket cost only $1, the cost to win the jackpot amounted to approximately $200, $1 per ticket. A reasonable question arises. Why, over 10 years, did no one notice that very few combinations were falling? As I said, there were about 200 of them. The thing is, Tipton's program was triggered only 3 times a year: May 27th, November 23rd, and December 29th. On all other days, the drawing proceeded honestly, with 30 million combinations. So Tipton was extremely cautious. About all this, he honestly told the police. And then, another not entirely understandable thing happened. In exchange for his confession, they promised to soften his 10-year sentence, but instead, they added another 15 years. Ultimately, Tipton's 10 years turned into 25. But don't worry about him. In prison, he served only 5 years and was released on conditionally early. As for the other participants in this fraud, they received from 6 months to 2 years in prison. And at the moment, all the people mentioned in this story are already free. If this story blew your mind, smash like. It helps more people see it. Comment and subscribe. See you in the next one.